All right, greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn, who has just dug a beautiful Jayhawks hat out of somewhere. Getting ready for the big game tonight, huh?
It should be not just a big game, one of those games that feels really special. I have no idea who wins, by the way. Usually I have a pretty good feel for these things. I honestly think it's a coin flip. I have no clue who's going to win this one.
Yeah, it probably hinges on whether Darren Peterson plays the whole game or not, to be honest, which is how I feel like Kansas's entire season is. But we're not talking Big 12 today. It is Monday, so we were talking ACC, and we are switching things up a little bit from how we usually do it. Instead of focusing on all of the teams in the field, we are really just digging down into the bubble. We're calling this sort of our what's it going to take week. So these six teams over here, according to Torvik's TourneyCast, they all have at least a 98% chance. In fact, I believe the top five here all have at least 100% on Torvik, and NC State is like a 99.7%. So they're all but certain to dance. We're not going to really fixate on their seeds. And then these, whatever this is, seven or eight teams, I'm calling them skim milk because they have less than a 2% chance of making the tournament. These are the in between teams where things get interesting. Just to go through the spreadsheet a little bit, up here is what their TourneyCast projection is. So SMU, 94.4% chance. Stanford, complete opposite, 4.5% chance. The wins above bubble here is the official NCAA wins above bubble. Everything in this range is Torvik's estimated wins above bubble, which for the most part is about the same. I think in pulling these five numbers and comparing them to what the NCAA has, Miami was the only one that was different by more than like 200ths of a point. And even they weren't all that much different. So it's a pretty good estimation. And then down here is where we're going to be fiddling with the results. So I built a formula that shows you if they win each game where there's a W, that's what they will end up gaining compared to where they are at now. That's how much WOB they will gain. So now in building this, I made an observation. Maybe you already know this, maybe not, and it's going to break your brain a little bit. But wins above bubble does not give a shit which games you actually win in totality. That's crazy to me. Like just looking at Virginia Tech here, right? If we get rid of all seven of their remaining games, if they lose them all, they would lose 3.38 WOB. If they win these three, or excuse me, that should be a W. If they win these three that they're supposed to win, it would subtract 0.38 from what is now a 0.18. They would be slightly above or slightly below bubble and would probably miss out. But if we change it and they get these three big wins at Clemson, at North Carolina, at Virginia, well, oh shoot, again, that should be W's. It's still a minus 0.38. And that's crazy to me, especially with how much we're fixated on WOB. But any thoughts from you on that? Because that's kind of breaking my brain.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because any loss you take is weighted in WOB based on who you played and location and all that. So
Yep.
you can get the big wins, but if you're getting a bunch of bad losses along the way, it makes sense that you'd end up with the same exact result because ultimately what WOB is showing is how the 40th best team in net would do against that schedule or what they'd be expected to do against that schedule. So if you went 4-3 with the four big wins and three bad losses, it's really the same as the opposite way as well. That's really what WOB is getting at is the final result record wise as opposed to who you beat and all that. Now where it becomes more important now for us in projecting forward is once you've got a W at Clemson, all of a sudden you got a lot more wiggle room because
Yeah.
that
Yep.
result is locked in. And that's what I think is important moving forward is once you start to lock in some of these results, your path to miss or make the tournament gets either really small one way or really big the other.
Yeah. It's just, to me, it's crazy because I've always thought of it like, a great win can make up for, two questionable losses, a really bad loss. You need to get to it, whatever. Like there's some kind of balance to that, but it comes out in the wash. It doesn't really matter. Like if you at the end of the season, right, you can go back and sum up all of the games, and regardless of, how if you go 19 and 12 and you have three really great wins and three really bad losses, it's the same as going 19 and 12 and not getting any great wins or any terrible losses, which I hope is where the art of bracketology still plays into all this, and it's not just we're just straight seeding teams based on WOB, which is kind of how it seems to be going after just 1 year of WOB. We'll see how this year goes, but hopefully there's still some art form to this, or we're just wasting our time, aren't we?
Well, I mean, there was art form to it too last year, in my opinion. Like, for example, if you were to just go straight down WOB, like you would see Ole Miss had a really good, uh, not only great road wins, but also really good overall WOB. Committee didn't like them as much. I think you look at Xavier with a negative WOB, they still made
Yeah.
the tournament. You had West Virginia 0.83 positive WOB, which is pretty nice for a bubble team. They did not make the tournament. So ultimately, there is some level of bracketology. I'm going to monitor how this year's results come out because, to your point, if they're too closely aligned to the metrics, then it's like, all right, what's even the point of doing all this? But I think there's still some room for the true art of bracketology to shine.
I also find it crazy that in WOB, a home win over UNC is less valuable than a road win over Wake Forest. And I get it. It's tough to win on the road, but that doesn't feel right. Like that's going to be a great win for Miami if they get it, and that's a game that Cal's supposed to win in our minds. So just interesting to see some of the numbers. I don't often drill down to this level, but let's touch first on SMU, who really just needs to avoid disaster, right? If they win the home game against Notre Dame, the home game against Boston College, and the home game against Miami, they would be right at pretty much exactly a zero. So if they do anything else aside from that, they should be in good shape. If they go 4-4, they'll be dancing, which feels about right for a team that is a 9 seed right now, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, am I looking at this correct? It says minus 1.69 currently if
So
they had those
that
three.
that is what they would lose the rest of the way. So this is what they have now. So it's basically minus point
Ah,
zero three.
gotcha.
Yep.
I thought that was at taking the 1.66 and then subtracting every. No, that is like SMU would be right on the true bubble at that point. So that fourth win should be enough to get them in. But again, let's not forget there were teams with positive WOB that missed last year as well. So you put yourself in that position. Like this, what I know fans get so annoyed with me about. They're like, "Why aren't you locking my team in?" I'm like, "Man, it's the beginning of February. Like we still got a ways to go." And it's not just, "Am I going to have you in my final bracket?" It's, "Are you going to be so far away from the bubble that there's no chance you miss?" Because we saw with West Virginia last year, they weren't on my direct bubble. They were close enough to the bubble that they got taken out. You got to be so far above the bubble that there's
Yeah.
no chance you can be removed from the field.
Yeah. And, with this little game here, we're trying to get to zero for each of these teams. But if there are bid thieves, if there are some teams playing the way, like it's just a rough estimate. It doesn't mean anything, even though last year, right, Xavier was, I believe, the only minus team, and they were like a minus 0.12. So it basically was a zero. If the committee hadn't penalized West Virginia for playing half the season without, or more than half the season without Tucker DeVries, it probably would have been every team with wins above bubble had gotten in, and every team without it would have been left out. But Miami's the interesting one here because that's the team that we've been really fixated on in bubble conversations lately. 18-3, I believe, overall. Just no great wins. Classic bubble team that had a terrible non-conference schedule, has now picked up bad home losses to Florida State and Cal. But if they just take care of business the rest of the way, if they win the game against Virginia Tech, if they win the home game against Boston College, if they win at Florida State, if they beat Louisville at the end, or if they don't beat Louisville, right there, they'd be zero point 0.3. So they'd be about one win above bubble if they go 4-4 the rest of the way. And it feels to us like Miami has to prove that it belongs, but to wins above bubble, not necessarily true.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that and you think pretty good shot wob wise that they get into the field, and that does not seem like a hard road to get to. So It'll be interesting to see, though. Something they would not have here, which I think is usually very critical to the tournament committee. Last year, we just talked about Xavier. They went on to the road and beat Marquette. Miami, like you usually have to have something. UNC didn't have that, but at least they had a neutral court win against UCLA. What is Miami's win away from home over a tournament team? That could be very problematic, even with a positive WOB. So I think that would put Miami into the picture. Whether the committee uses the art of bracketology to keep them out, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, and then even if they don't win the UNC game, that would mean they lose zero point 0.7 the rest of the way. Right now they're at 0.63. So they're still like right there on the bubble. Even if they go 3-5 and don't beat anyone, again, right there on the bubble as far as WOB is concerned. I think we would look at it and know that they haven't done anything worthy of getting into the field. I think if this is their ultimate path, I think they have about a 1% chance of getting in. Like at some point, you have to beat a tournament caliber team. I think that's one thing the committee has been consistent on year after year.
I mean, we say that, but UNC won 12 against Quad One. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you never know. That they showed WOB was very important last year. I suspect they'll keep it very important. I just tend to think that would not be enough because, to your point, like, you just look at it and you say, who did they beat? And ultimately, I think the answer is really pretty much nobody.
All right. Cal, who did win at Miami, who won at home against UNC, who beat UCLA on, I think that was technically a neutral court. I think that was in San Francisco. They are just slightly behind Miami in WOB, but their percentage chance of getting in is much lower. And I think that's a product of just not having the opportunities the rest of the way. Like they probably need to go, well, let's find out. It feels like they need to go 6-1 just because they don't have those games. But if they go 4-3, that would bring them right down to about zero on the bubble, wins above bubble. But I think they need to probably beat either SMU or get that one of those road wins over Wake Forest or Syracuse because I think just holding serve against like Pitt and Boston College when you're already probably not in the field is not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting looking at these WOB scores because I think you look at the quality of the team too. I think last year with North Carolina, everybody thought they were pretty good. They just weren't getting the quad one wins to go with it. I think the committee might be, they don't tend to factor in efficiency and predictive metrics all that much when it comes to selecting the field. I do think they would factor it in a little bit more with teams like especially Cal. Like if you're going to have that, you better load up on quality wins. And I don't know that they would have loaded up on quality wins to the extent that teams that traditionally have gotten in that scenario, like a St. John's or an Arizona State over the years have done. I think Cal would probably be on the wrong side of the bubble in that scenario.
Yeah. Virginia Tech, similar to Miami, where is your good win away from home? They had that triple overtime home win over Virginia, and that's about it. They beat probably their second best win was at home against George Mason. I don't know. At Syracuse, that would be their second best win. But even if they don't win any of these four big remaining road games, they would still be just slightly below zero on wins above bubble. So if they were to win these home games against Wake, Boston College, and Florida State, and let's say they beat Miami, which I think we would agree they certainly can, they'd be in pretty good shape, almost a full win above bubble at that point. Do you think that would be enough just to avoid any kind of bad losses and picking up one? I mean, any of those four, I'm pretty sure would be quad one wins. At Miami, I don't think would be quad 1A, but it would be a road win over a tournament caliber team, even if Miami ultimately doesn't get in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it ultimately might come down to where does the committee view Miami? If they view Miami as a tournament team, I think it would be enough to get into the field. If they view them as a close to the field team, yeah, I mean, they won at Miami, they won at Syracuse, they beat UVA. Also added some other wins over, like you mentioned, George Mason, Cal, like some other teams that are in the tournament picture. So I could see that maybe being enough. What I think Virginia Tech probably would prefer to do, lose the Miami game, get Clemson or North Carolina or Virginia on the road, and then all of a sudden I think it's an easy sell.
Which, again, is that feels right, but to Wob, it doesn't matter. It's still just breaking my brain here. Stanford is already at a minus 1.1, and to the point you've been making repeatedly, like they lost Chisholm Akpara 7 games ago or something like that. It feels like they're going to have to be convincingly above bubble the rest of the way because their previous wins don't feel like they count as much because of the Tucker DeVries rule from last year. But if they go, I think 5-2, that would get them to 0.1. So that would get them to right about at 0. But I think they probably need to go 6-1, and I don't think they can. I don't think they're good enough anymore. But there is a path. They still have a 4.5% chance, but they would have to go on some kind of a tear here.
Yeah, and I think even with West Virginia last year, I think we can easily forget that people started to think, oh man, West Virginia might be in trouble. And then what did they do? They beat Iowa State. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, I guess they can win. They got Iowa State. Totally okay now. And then the committee was like, yeah, they got one big win without DeVries. We're going to go ahead and ignore all that stuff anyways. So to that point, it can't be, in my opinion, it can't be good enough to be like, yeah, you beat SMU. It's like you got to go to NC State probably and win. And then you got to back that up with SMU or at Cal. Like, I don't think one big win is going to be enough. I think they'll have to do it multiple times and avoid the bad losses to show that they're a new team, a tournament worthy team standing on their own.
Yeah, it's definitely a tightrope walk for the Cardinal. I would assume you don't think Stanford's getting in. We both think SMU will get in. But of these other three, Miami, Cal, Virginia Tech, call your shot. Which one of them, or which two of them, or which three of them make the tournament, in your opinion?
You know, we talked about it previously. We'd mentioned Cal, but I think the way that Cal just got boat raced at home by Clemson maybe changes my opinion a little bit. I would go with
Yeah.
Miami now. We were talking about it as like a 50-50 at that point. I think it's Miami now just for that reason alone. That was a big opportunity for Cal to get a gettable, in my opinion, quad one game. It's gone now. That big opportunity is gone. And in fact, it just hurt the resume pretty significantly overall. So I'm going to go with Miami, even though I really like that Cal path.
I agree. I don't think Miami deserves it, but the metrics love them anyway, and I think they're probably most likely to get in. And I will pre-pitch my reminder that a bubbly ACC team always finds its way in. If you're anywhere close to putting an ACC team in, go ahead and do it because they are going to get the benefit of the doubt. They always do. Even though Bubba Cunningham is not the chairman anymore. I mean that we've like that's why I put North Carolina in last year, more so than just the Cunningham factor. It's just year over year. We had like Virginia Tech, we had NC State. It just keeps happening. So I'm sure one of these three will find their way in, even if none of them particularly deserve it. That'll wrap us up for today. And till next time, good luck with your Kansas game tonight. Take care and enjoy the hoops.